I think Russia and Ukraine, I think they're coming along. I want to say 5,000 young men. They happen to be mostly Ukrainian, Russian. 5,000 young Ukrainian and Russian men, and that's a big honor if I can do it. I think we're pretty close.
President Trump seems confident a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine is getting closer, and he's not afraid to turn up the heat on Putin in the process. In a firm message from the Oval Office, Trump signaled sanctions are back on the table if Russia continues to strike Ukraine. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff sitting down with Putin just this morning as the two sides continue to negotiate peace to the years-long conflict. So, Jackie, as I'm thinking about this story, the question that comes to my mind is, why does Russia want to be in a hurry? Or maybe the better way to put it is, how does Trump get Putin to kind of want to be in a hurry to get this done? Because they don't seem to have a ton of reasons to do that right now.
They don't, except that I don't think they came to the table at the beginning of the war or throughout. I mean, both sides are tired, right? And they didn't come on as strong as they could have. Can they keep things going? They can, but I think there's battle fatigue on both sides. So whatever front Putin is putting up, I don't necessarily believe that. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in that meeting between Putin and Steve Witkoff, who I hear is a real, tough negotiator on behalf of Trump. But, I come back to the same conclusion that getting Putin to back off to be able to save face is going to take concessions. And it's going to take, basically, in my view, a land grab. He's going to need territory to be able to walk away from this. And that's the danger anytime a war like this starts. At the same token, Zelensky wants to save face, too, and he doesn't want to give up more of his country as they move away. There's not going to be, in my view, a ceasefire that just says, we're going to go back to the way things were before this started and call it a day, and Ukraine won't join NATO and pretend like it never happened. It can't be that way. So I think the proposition of sanctions would be a good option for President Trump to light a fire under Putin because, especially with we talked about this yesterday with the energy production here, natural gas, all of those things, we can kind of choke them a little bit that way and see what can be done. But this is why I never wanted it to start. Well,
so Dagan, here's the quandary I see here. If the president starts getting tougher on Putin, and many have said he's not been very tough on Putin yet, that's maybe the case. If he starts getting tough on Putin, that drives Putin to where he's been going the last few years, which is China. And I think one of the big grand things that the president is trying to accomplish here is to disconnect Russia and China, because that's not good for us geopolitically. That seems to be the quandary you've got when you're negotiating with Russia right now.
Right, and I brought up the fact that it was China that has largely rearmed and rebuilt the Russian war machine, that China has been behind that. But I always look at Zelensky and think about him, and I can never get past the fact that he campaigned in Pennsylvania for Democrats in September of last year when he was on the ground with the Democrat governor and the now bye-bye gone Democrat U.S. Senator Bob Casey. And where was his head that he was doing that? And that like it or not, clouds the picture for him and the people of Ukraine.
Well, so Taylor, that is part of the problem. The president's dealing with Zelensky, and he knows that just as well as anybody knows that, and that, he was the guy in that race. So you've got that on the one side. On the other side, Putin, I don't think Putin's in a big hurry. I mean, I think they've taken huge losses.
Yes.
But he, Zelensky, I guess, in theory, has got to go back to his people and say, this is the deal. Will you do this? Putin doesn't have to do, let's be honest, Putin doesn't have to do that.
No, he can keep it going.
So, I mean, to me, that's the asymmetry of all this. Yeah. This is a very, very hard thing to solve. Yet the president's talking very optimistically about it right now.
Yeah, he was in that Time interview, and I think he was joking that ending it on day one was sort of a comment made in jest. The point was that he could end it sooner than maybe Biden could have. But look, this is an administration that's coming up on their 100 days. And I think for sure by that 100 days, he wants to be able to say, we've ended the war. You have Marco Rubio coming out and saying that both sides just have to agree to it. This war is endable. We've put forward the idea, but they have to agree. The problem is they don't agree because it involves Crimea. It involves, I don't know, Russia coming out and saying that we reserve the right to use nuclear power if we want. I mean, none of that sounds good. I agree with Jackie that the sanctions are helpful, but my worry is that when we were talking a lot about the decline in the dollar, some of the dollar weakness that we've seen in the last few weeks, some of the fringe commentary I was hearing was we've overused the dollar in sanctions. We've overused monetary sanctions. And so people like Russia and China have gone to other currencies, other SWIFT payments, not to say we are still not the world's reserve currency, we are, but the overuse of that has created this inability of the dollar to remain as strong as we thought it would be. Because those monetary sanctions just aren't as effective as they once were maybe 10, 20 years ago, because Russia has learned to skate around dollar dominance.
Yeah, and when you hear the president saying he's going to use more sanctions if Putin doesn't speed up a little bit, it doesn't have the same ring, Jerry, that it did a couple years ago when we talked about really heavy sanctions.
I think that's a really good insight. I'm looking at this, though, from way back. And my thinking is, my worry, frankly, is that this is one of those issues that could create some kind of really big problem at a time the administration is dealing with the tangle of tariffs, an economy that might be falling apart. We don't know yet, right? Trying to deal with the border, lots of things going on. And if you look back at history, it's always one thing that sets off a firestorm that you might not expect.
Well, they'd like it to not be this one, I think, because there's a lot going on. All right, coming up.